correct locations with the correct conditions, 5 years after, some of them were still effective. And the ones that were expired past that time were just less effective. They kind of lost their efficacy. And you have to think as a doctor, when is that dangerous? That's dangerous if you're thinking about taking expired emergency medications like epinephrine, insulin. These are medications that if they're not effective, you're in danger. Taking an expired Tylenol, the real risk of it is that it might not work. But taking expired epinephrine when you're having an anaphylactic attack means that you can die. You see how there's a difference there?
A lot of times they put expiration dates on things way earlier than they need to just to sell more products.
That's not the case. It's done in a way that you need to understand common use. And when you think of common use, most people do not properly store their medications. They frequently store them in the bathroom, which is a high humidity environment, which is not good for any medication. Medications that are like in gels and in liquid form tend to be even shorter expiration dates, meaning they're good for a shorter period of time because they're more likely to go bad.
Bingo. It's folic acid, which is good for pregnancy.
I mean, folic acid is important for pregnancy. It's advised by the AFP and the CDC that individuals who are considering getting pregnant or are pregnant take 0.4 milligrams to 0.8 milligrams, which is 400 micrograms to 800 micrograms of folic acid as a way to decrease the likelihood of neurologic defects occurring during pregnancy.
Every dollar we spend on anything other than food is a waste.
Wow.
I don't see the need to spend money on furniture. I'm a floor guy. I sit on the floor and it's very comfortable.
I mean, to each their own. Like, this isn't a medical issue here.
What I did was I found some 2x4s and these are styrofoam peanuts. So I just take all the peanuts, throw them in there, and then I cover it up with bubble wrap, and then this is a tablecloth, and it makes a perfect bed.
I mean, I just don't know if I would go to say perfect bed. I could see a lot of those like foam peanuts move around, and then as a result, you're laying on the hard floor and putting pressure on your shoulder that you could wake up with quite the painful rotator cuff or labrum.
Find good roadkill on the road. And if it's fresh, and good, I'm a butcher. I have no problem whatsoever eating something that's fresh and good.
I mean, this person's a butcher, so at least they have some experience on whether or not certain foods are safe to eat. It doesn't seem ideal given that it's not controlled how these things die. Did a car run over it? Did it eat some poison, then die, then a car ran over it? You know what I'm saying?
Tonight we're serving barbecued rabbit and a tossed salad made with flowers that we've gathered.
I mean, you could just grow vegetables. Like, you can go to an apple tree orchard and pull an apple off of it and eat it and know that it's an apple versus like, I can't even begin to guess the nutritional facts on a dandelion.
It was weeds, all weeds, dandelions, flowers, clovers, things that you just don't normally eat.
Yeah, again, I don't know the nutrition facts of those things, but it doesn't seem safe. Or necessary, that's the goal here.
One little thing, a little discovery that I've made, way to save on coffee. I enjoy my coffee in the morning. I have
me too.
made my own little coffee device out of an old sock.
But you couldn't use a shirt, you went for the sock? They definitely asked for this on the show. I hear the producers already. They
Of an old sock. Save on coffee. I enjoy my coffee in the morning. I have
me too.
made my own little coffee device out of an old sock.
But you couldn't use a shirt, you went for the sock? They definitely asked for this on the show. I hear the producers already. He's like, I use a piece of cloth. They're like, can you use a sock?
I developed a method with rubber bands to keep my soap levitated off of that water. It lets it dry, it prevents mildew, and my soap lasts double the amount of time it would normally last.
I'm with it, another one that I'm with.
I'm probably saving between $80 and $100 a year. It's mildew, and my soap lasts double the amount of time it would normally last.
I'm with it, another one that I'm with.
I'm probably saving between $80 and $100 a year just on soap alone.
I love it. As always, stay happy and healthy. Is a true contraindication. My 600-pound life, I'm curious how it compares to the other show that we've watched, Family by the Ton. Hate the names of these shows, but let's see what it's got.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Repositioning is of utmost importance, especially when you're overweight to this degree, because you start putting pressure on certain areas of your skin, your muscles, your bones. You could develop pressure ulcers. Those can get infected, becomes very, very complicated to treat.
I have no life. My legs can't even hold my weight anymore.
That's why it's so important when we talk about someone being obese or being overweight, we talk about their quality of life being equally as important as their state of health and their risks that they face.
My weight has condemned me to this bed. I can't do anything. I can't even bathe myself.
It's really important that you clean within the skin folds as well, because bacteria can get trapped there. It's a dark, moist environment most of the time, and as a result, fungi thrive in that type of environment. So not only do you have to wash it well, but you have to dry it well as well.
I have arthritis, gout, lymphedema, diabetes.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is all a result of metabolic syndrome, which can develop from being overweight to this degree. You know, a lot of people, when I even talked about bariatric surgery on some of my past videos, were quite critical of me for saying that bariatric surgery can be an option for somebody. But for somebody like this, who is struggling to move around because of arthritis, because of legitimate medical conditions, she's unable to take care of herself on her own. So yes, bariatric surgery can be a life changer, a lifesaver in many cases. While I don't think it's appropriate in all cases, far from all cases, I think you need to be open-minded that in medicine, the selection for the treatment depends on the individual patient in front of you. And this patient, for now at least, it makes sense.
As a kid, I was never overweight. It wasn't until my early 20s that my weight started to be a problem. I tried to break up with my boyfriend at the time. He lost it, and he took me hostage. He held me at gunpoint, and I thought I was gonna die.
A lot of folks rush to judge people. Many feel like fat shaming is appropriate because they view someone who is obese as lazy. People have true problems, medically related and psychologically related. This person dealt with a traumatic situation, and perhaps that is the cause of the start of this condition. So to judge someone unfairly just by simply writing them off as lazy is unfair, and that's why we're against fat shaming on this channel.
I was too scared to leave the house. I lived in constant fear, and I just ate. I'm a junk food junkie.
A lot of times when you eat those types of foods, they can increase temporarily some neurotransmitters in your brain that help you feel good. So it almost becomes a type of self-medication when you start binging foods like that, especially the junk foods.
If you don't lose the weight, I'm afraid this will pass.
It's a very reasonable concern to have when someone is of that size, because you're putting tremendous strain on every organ in your body. And it's an unnatural strain as well.
We're expecting the arrival of Marlon McCants. From what I understand, she may be close to 800 pounds. If she's that big, she should have used bariatric ambulance with medical care to go with her. She should not have come to use on her own. She should have waited for a safer option.
Yeah, I agree, but at the same time, that safer option may be unaffordable to most people. That's why, as a doctor, you can't just make recommendations. You have to make recommendations with the patient in mind. Do they want to do this? Can they afford to do this? Is this service even available to them?
I can already see that she is in one of the worst condition health-wise I ever seen.
For a prolonged trip like that with lack of mobility, her chance of developing a blood clot goes through the roof. And why is that dangerous? Because a blood clot is more likely to happen in the lower extremities. And if that clot travels in the circulation back to the heart and then to the lungs and gets stuck there, you develop a pulmonary embolism, which cuts off blood supply to the lung. And essentially that part of the lung starts dying. You can see how that could quickly become fatal.
I can't move my legs.
Your leg hurt? Look, I got a little bit swelling, huh?
Well, that swelling could be as a result of the DVT, that clot we just talked about, or it could be her lymphedema acting up.
We're going to run some tests to find out what may be going on with you.
The test that they're usually running in these situations would be a Doppler ultrasound of the lower extremities, which is an ultrasound to check for blood flow in the lower extremities to see if everything's open, if all the blood vessels are open, and then also a D-dimer test. And sometimes if they suspect that the clot has already traveled to the lungs, we can do a special type of CAT scan. Okay, so that could potentially mean that, one, obviously the pulmonary embolism we just talked about, but also a lot of stress on her heart. Something could have happened there, congestive heart failure-wise. But also patients that are of her size do develop sleep apnea where they stop breathing for periods of time. But usually it's not to the point where their heart stops as well.
She pushed her body to the limit for years. And the car ride down was just too much for her to handle. We need to get her to surgery immediately to put a filter in her.
So what he's talking about here is an IVC filter, which is an inferior vena cava filter, which is meant to be put into the vein in order to catch and act like a net for clots that could potentially leave the lower body and come up to the lungs, so it prevents them from reaching the lungs. Now, usually we do this only as a secondary resort, because in patients who have blood clots, we usually put them on blood thinning agents, unless there is a true contraindication for starting the blood thinners, or that they scan her legs and they see so many clots there that they don't even think that they can dissolve them. In this case, I'm not sure why they decided to go with the IVC filter instead of blood thinning agents, but they could be doing both at the same time. That's also been done in the past as well.
And I'm currently placing the filter in the vena cava. This is a delicate operation, so we have to do this very carefully, but it will help save Marla's life.
It's important to point out, because I don't think Dr. Now is making this very clear, this isn't a treatment to save her life. This is a treatment to prevent another clot from happening and dislodging and going to the lungs. And also, it's not 100% effective. That's a very aggressive diet. I don't know if she needed that aggressive of a diet right off the bat. Even eating 2,000 calories a day would cause weight loss. I don't think you needed it to be so extreme.
Outside of having to adjust to a controlled diet, they've been trying to get me up to walk. I feel like they're pushing me too hard.
So one of the orders that we almost always put in for patients that are hospitalized for extended period of time is ambulate with assistance, ambulate at least from out of bed to chair, because that allows the patient to decrease the likelihood of developing clots. It helps facilitate the recovery, starts working the cardiovascular system, because a patient who's so deconditioned, meaning not used to moving around, needs to gradually work their way up in order to return to be able to have some level of independence.
When some of them become immobile, they get used to others doing everything for them. That can be a tough dynamic to change.
You ready? Yeah. Okay, I'm bring this one first.
But we're going to do what we can to try.
You ready? All right.
The rest will be up to Marla.
Push up! I'm falling! Please! It's looking up!
If Marla won't get up, then we can't treat her.
Yeah, being able to move and carry your own body weight is very important in order for her to have success of any surgery. Because again, you need to have your heart strong enough to be able to do that. Part of my risk stratification for preoperative screening is finding out what a patient's activity levels are like. What are they able to do? For example, if a patient actively exercises, they're automatically a lower risk versus a patient who's sedentary, doesn't exercise, gets winded just by walking a block. That patient automatically becomes higher risk. When I say higher risk, I mean higher risk for their heart stopping. Like that's the risk I'm talking about.
I'm going to go ahead and perform weight loss surgery because outside of this, she has no hope. Gastric bypass surgery will reduce size of stomach and also bypass